today I have a man that who have experienced the worst in his life, but I'm telling you, what he went through didn't break him, but build him up. Here, my very good friend on with me, all the way from California, Mondo Del Vega. Is that correct? Do I say your name?
Hey, you got it close, better than I ever did. Man, my name is Mondo De La Vega. I am an ex-gang member from the streets of Los Angeles, California, a man that was saved by grace. And I grew up in the streets of Los Angeles, where in the 80s and 90s, there was an explosion, an inflection of gang membership. Over 60,000 gang members exploded into the scenes of Los Angeles, California, and it changed the trajectory and the landscape of America. When I was growing up in the streets of Los Angeles, I started learning my way of what the street culture was all about. Yet by that time, movies were coming out like, Colors and of course, American Me and Blood In and Blood Out. And then the music exploded into the scene with NWA and Ice Cube, Snoop Doggy Dogg, and Tupac. They were giving the insights of the streets of Los Angeles, the ghettos, the projects, the inner city, and speaking for us and giving us a voice. Yet behind all that, there was turmoil going on because America was used to seeing Italian gangsters and Irish gangsters and other kind of gangsters, but they never expected Latinos to explode into the scenes like we did, and it changed the face of America. I happened to be one of those kids that exploded into the scene, and it changed my life because when I came to America from Central America, fleeing a civil war and fleeing the destruction of my family, now I was the perfect candidate for being part of the gang and understanding that in order to be a part of that gang culture, you had to have certain characters. And I fit that mold, man. I fit the mold because here I was rejected from society. Here I was rejected from my father. I was rejected from what the world considered family values. And it had left a void inside of me. And that void, the gangs were able to come in and fill that void. I wasn't necessarily looking for a family, but I was looking to fit in. I was looking to be valued. And I was the perfect candidate to be a part of that. And the gang culture began to change my life in ways that I never expected. Yet my mother was working 3 to 4 jobs a week in order to put food on the table. And I was living inside of her home, yet I was becoming an enemy to my mother. Life in the streets, you can't have emotions. You have to be intentional. And in order to be intentional in the gang, you had to understand there were certain protocols that you have to live up to. And that began to change my life, man. As a young kid, not understanding the culture, not speaking a word of English, not understanding English, yet I knew I needed to fight. I knew I needed to learn how to survive. And that survival mode led me to pain, led me to understand that I was dealing with depression, anxiety, rejection, dealing with abandonment. And that hunted me because my father was everything to me. My father was my hero. My father was a man that never yelled at us. He never spanked us. He never cursed at us. But yet, in one moment, I used to think that life can change in 24 hours. But as I wrote the book, I realized that my life changed in seconds. In seconds, I went from having a home to not having a home. In seconds, I went from being a little boy to now a young man that needed to learn how to survive in the streets. And in my book, I detail what the 3 dots means, the teardrop and the baptism of the soul, how it changes the soul of a man. And they stole it from me, yet I had to learn how to survive within that culture. And that survival mode led to a lot of catastrophe around me.
Yes, let me ask you a very life-changing question. I think this is very important. And I believe those who are watching and will be watching later on, I'm telling you that this is going to minister to you on a very personal level. Okay, Brother Mondo, the reason why you went through this is because rejection of a father, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of young boys, as they're growing up, they look up to their father, and eventually that's what they see themselves into. And I was just reading another book, friend of mine from Iceland. Yesterday we were talking, and he was also a gang member. And then when I was reading your story, on the website, and then I was like, there's a similarity.
Yeah.
The rejection of a father, running from home to home, changing places, running, born and raised in Guatemala, went to El Salvador, and then finally to the streets of Los Angeles. So tell me about, like, what happened in your life that just shifted your father's mentality? Was
My
he an
father,
abusive from a very young age?
what's so funny about that is that my father was a very successful agricultural man that owned several coffee plantations. My grandfather was the mayor of our town. They were very in politics. We were, my family was considered a wealthy family, middle class. And my mom's side of the family, her family was wealthy and had a lot of influence in Central America. Everything seemed perfect. But yet I didn't realize the demons and the troubles that my father was dealing with, and he was taking it out on my mother. I thought that my father and my mother had everything worked out and everything was perfect. Again, my father never yelled at us, never cussed at us, never hit us. He was a charming man, he was a loved man, he was a respected man. Yet he was dealing with some troubles of his own and not understanding how to deal with that, not having the tools on how to use communication and being able to talk. And one moment changed everything. We were sleeping in our rooms, and I began to hear commotion inside of this room. And my father began to cuss my mother out, began to kick her and punch her, and begin to beat her like I've never seen him before. And my mother, in her desperation to leave that room, was able to escape that room and found herself in the corridors of our home. And my mother had used a broomstick to clean our home for years. Yet that very broomstick became a weapon of her demise. My
Mm.
father began to beat her with that broomstick. And I have a chapter of that called The Broomstick, on how my father began to unload the anger that and the frustration that he was dealing with. All of a sudden, the birth of rejection, the birth of hate, the birth of abandonment, the birth of betrayal, the birth of getting even with my father shifted in a matter of seconds. He went from being my hero to, all of a sudden, I now saw him as an enemy. Yet I was 6 years old and I felt paralyzed because I couldn't defend my mother. I thought he had killed my mother. And yet I didn't know what to do. But I told him before we had to leave that if I ever find him when I grow up, I'm going to kill him and get even with him. That moment was the moment that was birthed inside of me, that drove me to become a gang member, drove me to express the rage and express the feelings that I was carrying, because all I can see was my father beating my mother, and I stood there paralyzed in fear, not knowing how to defend her. Yet here I was, 6 years old, not understanding what was going on. And the father's rejection pretty much tailor made the identity that led me to the gang culture in Los Angeles, California.
Oh my goodness. And that's why I tell, like, how important to have father in the homes. It is important for us not to overlook the relationship between father and son. And the reason, that there's so much violence in the streets of Chicago, at the streets of New York,
Yeah,
and the streets of Los Angeles, it is because the absentee of the father.
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and of course the God is your father, but then also you need a father that can give you a sense of, like, hey, I got you covered, I got you back, I'm the protector of the family, I'm the breadwinner, I got you, man, no matter what happened to you, I'm here for you. I mean, this is a sense we definitely need from father. But tell me about, like, how did your life change drastically, and what was the turning point of your life? Because And also, give me a little bit brave story as we coming towards the end of our time. What happened in the gangs, and what was the tipping point of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, when you read my book, I go into detail the transformation that took place, the moments that changed my life, the moments that brought a gangster to grace. I believe that life is made up of moments that changes you, that changes the trajectory of who you are as a person. And I describe the moment that I got jumped into a gang. The only way I can describe it is it was the baptism of the soul. When
Mm.
I got jumped in, they used every ounce of physical force to jump me in. And when I was being jumped in, I went in as a little boy. And when I came out of that baptism of the soul, I came out as a fierce wolf. I describe it, a man that had passion to get even on the street, a man that had to live up to the nickname they had given me, which was danger. Yet I looked nothing like dangerous, right? But I had to live up to that name now. And I didn't look like a gang member. I didn't act like a gang member. That was a development that took, several years to become that. But yet I was already one because they stole my soul. They stole the character that I was born with. And in that process, I began to experience, in the book I described it, I was a living dead man. Death was around me constantly. I knew that I was next. I knew I was going to die. I didn't fear death. I didn't fear going to prison. I didn't fear getting into a fight. I didn't fear getting caught by the police. Not because I was a, big, tough gang member. No, listen, there's only one Pablo Escobar. There's only one El Chapo. There's only one Griselda Blanco. We were just young boys trying to survive, trying to protect the pain that we had inside, yet no one was listening. We were not allowed to express what we were going through and what we were feeling because we had a motto: we live to die and die to live for the barrio. Then we had another motto that love and compassion are a weakness of a warrior. So anytime we were able to, if we were shown that we were weak, it will be used against us. And death was all around us. And I describe in my book at one moment that death was near me to the point where I knew I was next. Yet God in his mercy brought my sister that changed my life. My sister told me three of the most powerful words that was the catalyst that changed my life. I want you to read about what was the three words, the three phrases that my sister gave me, because that was the turning point to understand that I needed hope. Again, I was not afraid of dying. I was not afraid of going to prison, not because I was tough, but because I was afraid of what was on the other side. Meaning, the only thing I feared was love. The thing I feared was peace of mind. The thing I feared was to feel hope. Listen, when you don't understand that mentality, it's hard to even comprehend what hope looks like, because the world said, lock them up, throw the key away. Then my homeboys in the gang reminded me every single day, do not make plans past 18 years old because you're not going to live that long. I was living fast. I was living wanting to die. Yet I was afraid of dying, not knowing if I had hope on the other side. What would that look like? And yet my sister walked in at the right moment to let me know three of the most powerful phrases that was the catalyst to give me the idea that I could live past 18 years old, that I was value enough to be given a destiny. I didn't believe that I had a destiny. I didn't believe in having kids. I didn't believe in marriage. I didn't consider myself a good enough even person to be in relationships because what I had seen and everything that was put in my mind. Yet when my sister walked in, that was the catalyst that began to change everything. And I found hope. I found the courage. I found the tenacity. I found the authority that God gives us as people to walk back into my gang. And that was a very dramatic moment because, accepting Christ is one thing, but believing that God lives in your heart, that's a different thing. Understanding that the power of the gospel can transform a man's life is a miracle. I think we missed the part because we're so used to wanting to see dead people being raised as a miracle or people being healed from cancer as a miracle. But yet one of the greatest miracles that we can't miss is a man's heart being changed for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when I walked in the next day after accepting Jesus in my heart, and that was a very dramatic moment that happened because death was stalking me, yet at the same time, life was chasing me. And the next day, I had a shotgun in my back, a pistol in my forehead, and another pistol in my chest, asking me what happened the night before. That was a very dramatic moment because for some people, religion and the Bible and Jesus and church is a Sunday morning experience. Yet for me, it was a death and life situation that changed everything.
Come on.
That got me into the position to say, God, I don't know what's on the other side. I don't know what you have for me. I don't know what my destiny is. But all I know is that I felt hope, I felt peace, and I felt love for the first time. And that changed my heart to understand that God had a plan for my life.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. Well, thank you so much. And I will encourage everyone to get the book. And this book is available for pre-order on Amazon. And I will encourage you can also get it from the Walmart, Target, Barnes and Nobles, Christian Books, Thrift Books, and also the Jim Baker Show store. What an honor to have you, brother Mondo. I'm gonna try Mondo De La Vega.
De La Vega. You got it, man.
Mondo De La Vega. There we go. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. What an honor. And your story really touched me on a very personal level that, every time we listen to these kind of stories, that makes us a better person. Yes. What not to do and what to do, yes, when especially raising our children and installing the love of Jesus Christ in them. And you are definitely a great example for fathers around the world for what you went through. It did not break you, but to build your faith in Christ, our Lord Jesus Christ. Well, thank you so much. God bless you. Have a beautiful day.